Hello, this is a presentation on Ronald Reagan as a leader as defined by the 5 practices of exemplary leadership presented by Rhonda Anderson. Ronald Wilson Reagan was the 40th President of the United States, born on February 6, 1911. His term of presidency started in January 1981 and ended December 1989, serving the full 8 years allowed in the presidential office. When Reagan took office, he promised to make the American people believe in themselves again and restore prosperity at home with the goal of achieving peace through strength abroad. Stated in Ronald Reagan, Life in Brief. During the 8 years of his presidency, he reshaped national politics and carried out his campaign promises to cut taxes and increase the deficit budget, using the latter as a leverage to negotiate significant arms control agreements with the Soviet Union. Despite some setbacks, including notable budget deficits, Reagan left office in 1989 with strong approval ratings, and his presidency is still ranked highly by the American people in subsequent polls, end quote, Miller Center. Ronald Reagan was an inspiring leader that made a difference in a nation's history. As Paul Peterson stated in his article, Speeches, Ideas, and the Outreach of Reagan, Reagan believed that today is better than yesterday and that tomorrow will be better than today. End quote, Peterson, 1993. President Reagan modeled the way by showing courage and passion in challenging times. Our nation had growing doubts about the meaning of our own lives and in the loss of unity of purpose as a nation. When Reagan took office, public confidence in government was at its low ebb since the Great Depression. Reagan displayed many of the admired leadership qualities listed in the Leadership Challenges text, such as being genuine, inspiring, determined, courageous, and always looking to the future. Reagan felt that the greatest accomplishment of his presidency was largely succeeding in his goal of making the American people believe in themselves again, end quote. I believe this was achieved by Reagan following through on what he said he would do, and by giving America an inspired vision, one that they could share and believe in. President Reagan was able to inspire a nation with a shared vision. In his campaign, he promised a rebirth of the American tradition of leadership. Sarah Drury stated that Reagan offered visionary rhetoric of renewal, employing emotional appeals and narration alongside national security policy plans to return the United States to peace through strength, end quote, Drury. When Reagan spoke of his vision and goals, he showed great emotion and used his skills in narration. Leroy Dorsey has called defining events and interpreting history as an aspect of the president's rhetorical leadership, the process of discovering, articulating, and sharing the available means of influence in order to motivate human agents in a particular situation. End quote, Dorsey, 2002. I believe that Reagan was able to articulate his vision in a way that gripped and motivated a passionate nation to share in his vision. Reagan stated, "The greatest leader is not necessarily the one that does the greatest things. He is the one that gets the people to do the greatest things." End quote, Reagan. It stated in the Leadership Challenge that leaders challenge often with great passion because they want people to live life on purpose and with purpose, end quote, Kuntz and Posner. Ronald Reagan was not one that shied away from a challenge. Reagan was raised in a Democratic family and admired President Franklin D. Roosevelt all his life. However, in 1962, Reagan became an ardent conservative and switched his registration to Republican. In 1976, with the governorship of California behind him, Reagan just missed the Republican presidential nomination from Gerald Ford, who became president in 1974 after the resignation of Richard Nixon. Reagan's near-miss candidacy made him the leading contender in 1980, where he won the Republican nomination and went on to win the presidency from Jimmy Carter. During Reagan's presidency, he set out to revitalize the economy, reduce taxes, and balance the federal budget. And in foreign affairs, he rebuilt the American military and negotiated with the Soviet Union to avoid the possibility of nuclear war. Reagan demonstrated great courage and passion by creating change in our nation's revitalization. Ronald Reagan enabled others to act through instilling pride, self-confidence, and unity in the people of the United States of America. In the article, The Confidence Gap During the Reagan Years, 1981 to 1987, wrote by Lippitt and Snyder, they stated, "The President evoked pride in the nation and faith in its promise and achievements, resulting in a sizable improvement in the public morale." End quote. Reagan had an amazing, inspiring, and optimistic vision that inspired a nation to believe. When he gave a speech, he was very descriptive and used narration to convey his goals. He showed passion for his beliefs. While sharing his vision, he spoke of the step-by-step goals that would allow his vision to be achieved. Soon after Reagan took office, the nation united, and faith in the government began to be restored. As stated by Paul Peterson, Reagan was a thoughtful and hard-working president of what he regarded as the most important dimension of the presidency. He was no passive reader of speeches written by others. He knew what he wanted to say and how he wanted to say it." End quote. When Reagan gave a speech, he was honest, he encouraged his audience, and motivated them to believe that anything was possible. He made his supporters feel appreciated and let them know that their contribution was important. Ronald Reagan was an inspiring and admired leader. He was able to unite a nation during a time of economic troubles. At the end of his 2 terms in office, Ronald Reagan viewed with satisfaction the achievement of his innovative program, known as the Reagan Revolution, which aimed to reinvigorate the American people and reduce their reliance upon government. He felt he had fulfilled his campaign pledge of 1980 to restore the great confident roar of American progress, growth, and optimism. Thank you for your attention.